Hey everybody, it's Ryan, and this is a bonus episode of A Morel Dilemma. In episode 2, you heard Dr. Rob Bassett from the Philadelphia Poison Center walk us through a mnemonic for remembering the major groups of poisonous mushrooms. And I know for some of you, the mushroom poisoning is exactly why you're here. And if you want to learn more about it, I want to help you do that. So in this bonus episode, we actually get to hear Dr. Bassett take us through the entire Gotta PICCEM mnemonic. He's an excellent educator, and I think you're going to learn a lot. And if you want to go even deeper, you can head to gottapiccem.com, GOTTAPICCEM.com, where I created a poisonous mushroom blog that complements the card game we built about mushroom poisoning. You've heard about the game in the mid-roll ads and at the end of the show. It's called Gotta PICCEM. When you go to gottapiccem.com, you're actually taken right to the rules of the game. But if you click Learn the Name in the upper banner, you'll get an expanded version of the Gotta PICCEM mnemonic, which includes even more poisonous mushroom classes and a one-liner about each of those poisonous mushroom groups for a rapid overview. And if you click Learn the Mushroom, you'll get a deeper explainer on how each mushroom poison works, what poisoning looks like, how we treat it, and a list of published case reports for those types of mushroom poisoning right underneath it, all next to images of the poisonous mushrooms themselves. And if you prefer a lecture instead of reading, you can find that on the website too. The game, along with the blog, have been used at medical conferences to teach healthcare workers how to treat mushroom poisoning, but it's designed for anyone, including you. So feel free to learn as much as you like. So if mushroom poisoning is what brought you here, we have a lot of ways for you to keep learning. But for now, let's get into Dr. Bassett's mnemonic, the one thing that really inspired all of this.
Rob Bassett. I'm an emergency physician and a medical toxicologist, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Associate Medical Director for Philadelphia Poison Control at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia.
Dr. Bassett is really a gifted medical educator, which you're about to hear. He rattled off a fantastic mnemonic, not only to remember all of the toxic mushrooms, but how to remember their clinical syndromes in a way that you'll be able to identify them should a patient present. So without further ado, let's hear from Dr. Bassett.
So I will say I have a vested interest in, teaching about all things toxicologic. So forgive me if I start to geek out a little bit about, way to learn these things. But for the mushroom enthusiasts, especially people in the medical community who have an obligation to be aware of this or might be in the position to take care of this, something that can help you remember them when you get woken up on a Saturday night, a mnemonic called Gotta PICCEM. How clever is that? And I will pay a quick nod of gratitude and homage to one of the most famous toxicologists in the Philadelphia area, Rich Hamilton, who's a former fellowship director and chair of the Drexel University program, who published a mnemonic for remembering toxic mushrooms. And one of the great things about this, unlike just trying to remember, the names in the back of your head, he categorized them based on the time of onset of symptoms, which, spoiler alert, is really the sort of linchpin in how we decide which ones are the most life-threatening. And I'll just cut right to the chase and say, in general, the age-old teaching is if you start to develop symptoms very quickly, it's usually inversely proportional to the toxicity. In other words, the least worrisome are the ones that start to show symptoms the quickest. Somebody consumes a mushroom and they start to get vomiting and diarrhea very quickly within 6 hours. That's usually reassuring, as opposed to somebody who's fine or for an extended period of time and then develops symptoms after 6 hours. Those are the ones we get really concerned about because mechanistically, the ones that are implicated are the most toxic mushrooms. So let me run through it really quick. So the Gotta PICCEM. So G is for Gyrometra or Gyrometra esculenta, which is also the false morel. Morel mushroom is a delicacy, and this is one of those mushrooms that gets confused for an edible mushroom, occasionally gets mistaken for the morel, and unfortunately can be very, very toxic. And long story short, it depletes an important cofactor, and it can lead to seizures, which can be very, very dangerous. The next in the Gotta PICCEM is O for arelanine, and that's the toxin that's associated with Cortinarius species. So the Cortinarius species is known to cause renal failure.
This mushroom is nicknamed the deadly Cortinarius, or the deadly Cort. It's the O in gotta PICCEM because it contains orellanine, the toxin that causes kidney failure. It's associated with horses because the author of the book The Horse Whisperer was poisoned by a deadly Cortinarius and ended up needing a kidney transplant from his daughter. He went on to live a happy life and eventually died of a heart attack in 2022. His book, The Horse Whisperer, was actually converted to a movie with Robert Redford.
Continuing on that same horse theme, if you will, the T, so we're up to GOT. GOT is Tricholoma equestriae, and this is, the one that causes muscle breakdown. This is another one of those mushrooms that usually doesn't develop symptoms very quickly.
Tricholoma equestriae is sometimes called the man on horseback or the yellow knight. I like to picture a yellow knight riding a horse and getting rhabdo from his vigorous exercise. That's at least one strange way that you can remember its toxicity.
And the fourth one in that category of ones that have delayed onset or also associated with the most severe toxicity is the granddaddy of them all, amatoxin. Amatoxin from the Amanita species and the Galerina species. And this is the one that causes liver toxicity. And the ones who do die are usually from amatoxin. And this is the one not to fool around with. So if you can only remember four, the ones that have that delayed onset, GOTA, the first portion of the GOTA PICCEMs, are the ones that I get most concerned about. So the PICCEM, PICCEM, the first one is psilocybin or psilocin, the sort of psychedelic mushrooms that cause like an LSD effect. Those can, present, early on with some GI distress and some psychogenic abnormalities, typically not anywhere near life-threatening. The I in PICCEM is ibotenic acid, and this comes from Amanita muscaria, the fly agaric, the Mario Brothers mushroom of infamy. A lot of people don't realize that can be psychedelic. Interestingly, has, sort of two toxins associated with it. Ibotenic is the first one, very like stimulant-like effect, but it also gets converted into muscimol, which has more of a GABA-like effect, so like a sedating effect.
So the fly agaric, or Amanita muscaria, the typical toadstool mushroom you've seen in Mario, contains ibotenic acid and muscimol. Dr. Bassett did a great job explaining this in the original audio, but I accidentally cut the file and we don't have it all. What he's saying is ibotenic acid acts like a stimulant and muscimol affects GABA. So it's basically a speedball in a mushroom, an upper and a downer. So you can see symptoms of hyperexcitation and agitation, as well as drowsiness and coma.
The C is for coprine, the coprine species, or the inky caps often is referred to. And these are the ones that cause a disulfiram-like reaction. So if you consume alcohol with them, you can get a disulfiram-like reaction, which again, is very, very uncomfortable, but not necessarily life-threatening. E for emesis, little brown mushrooms. And there's just tons and tons of them out there that cause GI distress. So a lot of times, these are the ones that are like kids or people out in the yard will pick some brown mushrooms, eat them, start throwing up pretty quickly and come in. And that's it. It's usually a self-limited disease. Very, very reassuring, but often presents early on in, after their exposure.
These are the mushrooms we call LBMs, or little brown mushrooms. And frequently, they're neither little nor brown. It's just a catch-all phrase that we have for mushrooms that cause rapid onset diarrhea and nausea and vomiting, but no other symptoms. Jack-o'-lantern mushroom, false parasols, the sickener, which is Rusula emetica. It looks bad, but then usually afterwards they do okay. But
yeah, and I like the naming, the nomenclature. Like we should definitely distinguish between something called the sickener and the death cap, like totally different. I like that. It's nice. It really implies what the toxicity is like. And then the M is for muscarine, and these are the muscarinic like mushrooms like clitosabe or inosabe that create like a cholinergic crisis, so like your sludgy symptoms.
These ones are commonly called bluet mushrooms or sometimes fool's funnels. While we said that the late onset toxicity mushrooms are the ones we worry about, that's not entirely the case. These ones, muscarine containing, can also be fatal. In fact, past guests of the show, Dr. Amy Zosel, our most recent guest, and Dr. Matthew Stanton, one of our very first Talks vs. the Internet guests, published a fatal case report when a couple went out foraging and ate some clitosabes. They developed a cholinergic crisis, and unfortunately, one of them died. They actually pulled the mushroom cap out on autopsy to confirm it. I'll put a link to that case report in the show notes. But cholinergic crisis, as anyone in the tox world knows, is no laughing matter, as it's the same syndrome you would see with nerve gas or organophosphate poisoning. Luckily, it develops rapidly, so we can usually identify this toxicity quickly and intervene as long as they're in healthcare.
So just for the sake of completion, the GOTAs, the GOTAs, are the ones that happen after 6 hours. The PICCEMs are the ones that happen before 6 hours. And although I said GOTA PICCEM was the whole mnemonic, one thing I didn't tell you was that the A in GOTA is squared, so there's 2 A's, and the P in PICCEM is squared because there's 2 P's. So the A is actually GOTAA, and that second A and this second P actually refers to those middle mushrooms. So the ones that can start early, but also cause significant toxicity. So the ones that can actually start early, but still portend worse prognosis.
Dr. Bassett is hammering in on this because these are rule breakers. We use the timing of nausea to help us determine whether or not this will be a big deal. Usually late nausea also means late organ injury, and early nausea with nothing else means no big deal. But these few mushrooms can cause early nausea and late organ injury.
That second A stands for alenic norlucine or Amanita smithiana. But Amanita smithiana, is the one that causes early GI distress and then, subsequently renal failure. And this is the one that's fortunately in the U.S., primarily located in the Pacific Northwest. But for the same reasons, I've learned to not say I don't need to know how to take care of cobra envenomations in Philadelphia because things travel. Anybody can get anything these days. And then that second P, the PICCEM species, can cause early symptoms, but also cause devastating organ issues. And that's the PICCEM syndrome, which is hepatic and renal toxicity, and then also a hemolytic anemia as part of that syndrome.
While alenic norlucine can be found in several mushrooms on the West Coast, including Amanita smithiana, proxima, and abrupta, the PICCEM species is fortunately in another country, not to say it can't be imported here. The alenic norlucine mushrooms are sometimes confused for edible matsutake mushrooms, however, and there are misfortune cases here in the U.S.
So the PICCEM is another one not to be played with as it can cause pretty dramatic effects. And that's GOTA PICCEM in a nutshell.
I think that's the most useful mnemonic I've ever heard. Thank you so much, Dr. Bassett, for actually unknowingly joining the show and breaking down mushroom toxicity in a really easy to digest and clinically useful way. Check the show notes for a link to Dr. Richard Hamilton's website, which goes over the written GOTA PICCEM mnemonic. One more time, just for some spaced repetition. G is for gyromitrin, which causes late nausea and seizures from inhibition of GABA production. O is for arelanine, which is found in the deadly Cortinarius and causes renal failure, which it did to the author of the book The Horse Whisperer. T is for Trichomoma equestre, which is called the man on horseback, and it causes rhabdomyolysis. A is for amatoxin-containing mushrooms, and there are many throughout the entire United States. Amanita virosa, Galerina, Lepiota, and Amanita phalloides are just a few. And they're aptly named things like the evil Bubellini, the funeral bell, the destroying angel, and the death cap. These cause late nausea and late liver failure that leads to death, and they're the number one cause of death from mushrooms in the United States. Then we move on to the ones that can cause early symptoms, including the A for alenic norlucine, which you're going to find in Amanita smithiana, proxima, and abrupta. The common names of those mushrooms are actually pretty boring. It's Smith's Amanita or the proximal bulb Amanita, but they're really only a problem for people on the West Coast when they get mistaken for matsutake mushrooms, and they cause late renal failure after their early GI symptoms. Then we have the first P in PICCEM is for the PICCEM species, which is in another continent, but can cause multiple organ injuries, including a hemolytic anemia. Our second P of the PICCEM are psilocybin-containing mushrooms, which I think most people are familiar with their effects here in the United States, as psilocybin is being explored as a potential therapeutic option for things like depression. If you want to know more about that, check out episode 25, The Poison Lab Does Psilocybin. I is for ibotenic acid and muscimol, which are found in the fly agaric mushroom, also known as Amanita muscaria, the typical mushroom you see in any sort of artwork that has mushrooms, a red cap with white spots. This causes stimulant and sedative effects and is used for its euphoric properties. C is for coprine-containing mushrooms. These are found in inky caps, which are mushrooms with shaggy black heads that tend to auto-digest themselves and look like they contain black ink. Poperin works similar to disulfiram and inhibits ethanol metabolism at the acetaldehyde stage, increasing acetaldehyde concentrations and making people feel pretty icky. E stands for emesis, which are all the little brown mushrooms that are neither little or brown, but the ones that cause rapid vomiting or diarrhea, but little else that we need to worry about, and there's hundreds of these. Common ones include jack-o'-lanterns, Russula emetica, and the false parasol. Finally, the M stands for muscarine-containing mushrooms, aptly named as it was the compound that helped identify muscarinic acetylcholine receptors, and thus they stimulate those exact receptors, leading to a cholinergic crisis. Clitosobes and inosobes are the two primary mushroom species that we see, and they are called blewits or fool's funnels. And, as Dr. Bassett said, that's gotta pick 'em in a nutshell. Remember, there's old mushroom hunters and bold mushroom hunters, but there's no old bold mushroom hunters, and all mushrooms are edible, but some only once. Hey everyone, it's Ryan from the Poison Lab with an announcement I am beyond excited to share. After ages of tinkering, testing, and refining, my poisonous mushroom card game is finally here. Gotta pick 'em. You can get your copy at gottapick'em.com and click the link that says Buy Gotta Pick 'em. The game is so much fun and it's actually pretty educational. The name of the game itself, Gotta Pick 'em, is a mnemonic to help remember the poisonous mushrooms. And you can find a podcast episode about that at thepoisonlab.com. Check out the episode A Mnemonic for Poisonous Mushrooms with Dr. Rob Bassett to learn more. But we're talking about the game, which contains 58 individual poisonous mushrooms, as well as 19 different antidotes or modifier cards. You get dealt a hand of different mushrooms and antidotes, and you can forage one of them. Then you pass your hand to the next player and get a new hand from someone else. You score points by collecting mushrooms within the same toxin class, grabbing their antidotes, or modifiers that make the mushrooms more or less toxic. So as you forage, you can build strategies to get more points from the same mushrooms in the next rounds. It's a bit of an engine builder meets Sushi Go. And because I'm a huge nerd, the scoring systems actually complement the toxins, where things that cause late toxicity get you points later, chronic toxicity builds up over time. There's actually 15 different ways to score. It's really fun. And it's endlessly replayable. Not only do you get different hands every game, which might change your strategy, but in between rounds, you change up how things are scored by drawing bonus cards, which might get you extra points for, say, a mushroom that has a ring on the stipe, or mushrooms with a certain color spore print, or a certain toxin class. On top of that, at www.gottapick'em.com, the companion blog, you can find multiple rule variations to change up the way you play, and you can experiment and find the way you like the most. And that's the next part. At gottapick'em.com, you can find a companion blog with pictures of all of the mushrooms from the cards and a detailed explainer for each toxin class, where they're found, the toxic syndrome that they create, how they're treated, real case reports of poisoning from those mushrooms, and expert insights, because this game about poisonous mushrooms was made by people who treat poisonous mushrooms. So whether you're a science nerd, a poison nerd, a mushroom nerd, or a board game enthusiast, this game is made for you. You can grab a copy at gottapick'em.com. I cannot wait for you to play this. Head over to gottapick'em, that's gottapiccem.com, and you can get a copy of it for yourself. And please, nothing would make me happier to see a picture of you playing your first round. So please snap a photo and send it to toxtalk1, TOXTALK1 at gmail.com. I'm really excited for you to check this out. I know I have a blast playing it, and I think you will too. And remember, buying this game is not the only way you can show support for the show. This is a totally unfunded production, and it exists because of support from listeners like you to help pay for website hosting, audio production software, sound engineers, all sorts of hidden costs that are associated with putting on an educational show like this. So you can help support the show at www.thepoisonlab.com/support, and you'll get something back. Not only will you have no ads while you're listening, as well as bonus content, but supporting members actually had early access to buying this game at a discounted price. And they're enrolled for things like giveaways of this game or merch when we have it available. So if you want ad-free episodes, bonus content, updates as soon as possible, and access to things like giveaways or discounts when they're available, head over to www.thepoisonlab.com/support, where for as little as $1 a month, you can help us keep the show going. But you don't have to pay anything to support the show. I'm just happy you're here listening. Thank you for being part of the community that makes this show so much fun. Okay, final note. I always give you timestamps at the beginning of episodes where you can jump to get into whatever topic you want to hear about. Well, because I put this announcement at the front of a lot of episodes, all those timestamps will be off. So if you're hearing this message, add 4 minutes and 30 seconds to whatever that timestamp is, and it should take you right there. Thanks for listening.